let's get into it now. A spoiler-free movie review of Speak No Evil, not to be confused with See No Evil, Hear No Evil, one of my favorite 80s movies with Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder. Also not to be confused with See No Evil from 2006, one of the first WWE movies starring Kane the Wrestler, who was one of my favorites growing up. This movie is completely different, although it is a remake of a 2022 Danish movie with the same name, Speak No Evil. The movie stars James McAvoy, who I believe and have been saying he is a very underappreciated actor. It's from director James Watkins. It also stars Mackenzie Davis, who I really enjoyed in Happiest Season. And I feel like she really fits into a suspense thriller movie like this. Them two together was probably my favorite part of this entire movie. But what the movie is about, you have this family. They get invited to spend a weekend out in the countryside. They meet this couple on vacation, having fancy dinners, staying at a fancy resort, and they're going through some things as a couple. They have an 11-year-old daughter who has this attachment to this stuffed animal. They're trying to get her to grow up, so a lot of family dynamics going on. Obviously, why they went on vacation was trying to relax and get away from that. And then they meet this couple, they hang out, sometimes you go on vacation, you have these vacation friends. And this movie is kind of about letting all the intrusive thoughts win. And even though you have everything in your body telling you not to do something, you're shutting that off and you're saying, why not? Let's do it. Because they go on vacation, they have a good time. And then this couple, James McAvoy and his partner, they send him a postcard and say, hey, we were serious about that. Come out to the countryside. Come hang out with us. Disconnect from your life in the city. You'll love it. And they decide, you know what? Let's go. There are a lot of moments in this movie where they're just like, all right, let's go. Let's do it. Let's not think about it. It's one of those movies when you're watching it, you're like, you idiot. Don't do that. I think that's also what added to some of the enjoyment in the theater while watching this movie, because I don't necessarily believe it's a movie you have to rush to the theater to watch, because it's not really a horror movie. Everything that happens in this movie could happen in real life, and maybe sometimes that makes it scarier than a traditional, what you would think of as a horror movie, because the only really scary force in this is James McAvoy's character being maniacal. And that could really happen. Probably happens every day more than you think. There wasn't anything about it that the big screen enhanced. The only thing that made it a little bit more enjoyable was the fact that it was, at least in my theater, relatively full. And I went to an early showing, and there were a lot of people in the audience reacting. And sometimes I like that, sometimes I don't. But with a movie like this, to hear people talking and being like, oh, no, don't do it, or laughing too, because I think if this was a movie that I watched at home, there are some deadpan comedy moments that kind of come out of nowhere, very dry, not too intentional, but because of the audience reaction, I found myself laughing and enjoying certain parts of this movie that if I were watching it at home, I might not have had that same reaction. But I do believe if this was a movie I watched at home on a Friday night with all the lights off, nobody else home, it maybe would have been a little bit scarier, just because I think, oh man, again, everything in this movie could actually happen if you encounter some people that are a little sketchy, a little weird. That is exactly what James McAvoy and his partner are in this movie. If you've ever hung out with people that just take a joke a little bit too far and just make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, where if I were to play a joke on you, the payoff would be in like 5 seconds. I'd make a joke and be like, I'm just kidding, real quick. In this case, in this movie, they just keep going for like 30, a minute, 2 minutes too long, where it feels so uncomfortable that you can't tell if they are joking, you can't tell if they are actually being just jerks, and it comes off as very unsettling. And there are cringe-worthy moments in this movie just because it really allows you to kind of stew in that uneasiness of being in a situation where you don't really feel comfortable with these people who are so dominant and very opinionated and very in your face. They can't let one thing go. They just keep pounding you and pounding you and pounding you until you feel so uncomfortable that you want to scream at them. I think I did enjoy that aspect of the character development of just seeing the couple on one side with Mackenzie Davis really being the dominant force there. I thought she was so charming, and I really want to see her in more suspense and horror movies. I think probably make a great lead in a full-on horror slasher movie because she had a really great presence to her, and her personality clashing against James McAvoy's personality was just this very uneasy tension. And there are some things that both of their characters do that you have to be like, come on, why would you do that? But again, in a movie like this, if a person said no to things, you wouldn't have a movie. If they decided, nah, let's not go hang out with them on the countryside, you wouldn't have a movie. So everything in your being is going to think these people are dumb for allowing certain things to happen, for saying yes to things. So if you're somebody who watches horror movies or suspenseful movies and think, that is stupid, I hate them, I want to turn this off, this might not be the movie for you. But if you like laughing at people's expense and think, oh, I'm glad I'm not in that situation, I think this is a pretty fun and decent watch. And I ended up enjoying it a lot more than I was expecting to. The real main reason I decided to go watch this movie is because they pounded that trailer in my head. Every movie I've seen for the last at least 2 months, I've seen this trailer. And I thought that I was at a point where the trailers really don't affect me a whole lot. I'm going to go see what I want to go see. I kind of know what's going to be good and what's going to be bad. And very rarely does a trailer sway me. But this movie had the perfect trailer that really enticed you to want to see it. Very well produced and just had that, I'm curious about that movie after watching the trailer. So it really worked on me, and I'm somebody who goes to the movie theater every single week. And I could imagine if you went in the last 2 to 3 months and saw this trailer, you would see it and think, maybe I have to come back for that one. So movie trailers, in their most traditional sense, I think work. I think they spent all the money on promotion just making sure that people saw this trailer because it was beaten to my brain that I was really just going to see it because I was like, all right, I'll go see it. Shut up. Stop playing the trailer. And then I was like, okay, this is actually pretty good and enjoyable. I do think there's a little bit of a threshold for a movie like this. Even if it did everything perfect, I still don't think the formula of this movie and it being something that I've kind of already seen before, also with it being a remake, in my head, it would peak at about a 4. Overall, the story on its own is probably a 3. I haven't seen the original Danish film, but I can only imagine that it was so much better than this one because this happens a lot. A movie does well in another country, and instead of pushing that movie here, they're just like, let's remake it and give it to an American audience. So I feel like that is probably the better movie here. So I'm definitely going to check that out now that I've been exposed to the story. But what really drives this movie to another level and shows you how important it is to cast the right actor is James McAvoy's performance. He earns his paycheck every single movie that he is in. And I think it was after watching Split, where he's playing different characters with different personalities, that movie really solidified him in my mind as, oh, he can really do it all. And when he's on screen, it is just so commanding. And he does the exact same thing in this movie because this character is so dominant, is this force to be reckoned with. And it would not have been the same movie if it was not him in that role. The entire cast just worked really well together. That took what could have been just otherwise kind of a throwaway movie to put out in September and really made it something noteworthy. So this movie really proved to me that it does matter who you cast. Even if you have a great story already that has worked in another country, unless you get that right cast for an American audience, it's not going to work. Because it was the performances that really drove this movie home. Because on surface level, there's nothing too outlandish or too crazy or anything that comes out of left field that really captivates you as the viewer, but it's all the tension that James McAvoy's character in particular really creates and really makes you want to see this movie from beginning to end. The movie is right under an hour and 50 minutes, which if they would have cut it off a little bit and made it a straight 90-minute movie, I think it would have packed a little bit more of a punch. This movie was made for a relatively low budget, $15 million. It opened to about $11.5 million. So I think it's going to make its money back in its theatrical run. Although, again, I still don't think it's a movie you have to see in theaters. I still think if you streamed it at home, turned off all the lights, silence your cell phone, and completely allow yourself to take in this movie and create that same vibe at your house, I think the same kind of energy will come across of you probably feeling a little bit more freaked out. The only thing you'd probably miss out on is that audience commentary if you're into that. And if you're not, then you're perfectly fine watching this movie at home. For Speak No Evil, a very surprising score for me, a lot higher than I thought I was going to give it. I give it 3.5 out of 5 Teslas.